Let's go.
Strong signal. Station.
We're rolling. We're gonna go in 7, 6, 5, 4,
Bringing you on the front line and beyond the headlines.
Outside the wire.
Outside the wire.
Look into my eyes. You are getting sleepy. You will vote for my mother.
Last summer, I was offered the opportunity to produce a documentary on Ronald Reagan's winning of the Cold War over the Soviets. As we all know, he won that war not with mutually assured destruction, but with a speech. It's fascinating how much we weren't taught about Ronald Reagan in school and how skewed what we were taught was. But reliving the Reagan years again makes me see how almost laughable some of our presidential candidates were and are, invoking his name and attempting to emulate his stature. The main difference is that Ronald Reagan's politics were sincere. Note to today's presidential candidates, Reagan was an unashamed conservative and won his elections handily. The word landslide is quite appropriately applied. Like today, America's enemies back then weren't playing games. The Russians sought to annex Afghanistan and were actively seeking a logistical military presence mere miles from the United States. Ronald Reagan didn't seek the blessing of the media and the academic elites. He wasn't constantly monitoring his favorability numbers. He had one purpose and one purpose alone: keeping America safe and people free. Ronald Reagan respected religion, but didn't wear it on his political sleeve. He didn't try to show voters that his beliefs were stronger or more sincere than others. Therefore, he didn't have to defend his beliefs and morals to a hostile media that, in some cases, had neither. As a conservative, Ronald Reagan was the real deal. He didn't try to come off as a moderate, disguising his conservatism. He governed as president the same way he governed as governor of California, on conservative principles, ignoring the insults of his critics. Ronald Reagan was portrayed as old and lacking the intelligence of his liberal counterparts. Funny how he was too dim to lead, yet was smart enough to handily defeat his presidential opponents, and do so without compromising the principles of those whom he asked for support. Our candidates today could learn something from Ronald Reagan. Citing his name in every speech at every campaign appearance doesn't make one Reagan-esque. Ronald Reagan never had to explain a previous liberal voter policy advocacy because he walked the walk. Almost every Republican presidential candidate today has embraced some policy or legislation that was in no way conservative. Some of those liberal policies have met with mixed results. Some have given our political rivals a competitive edge, all in the name of wanting to get along with them. Reagan understood our foreign opponents were, in some ways, very similar to our domestic ideological ones. They both had no intention of compromising with us, yet today, in an effort to be liked, Republicans continue to offer that futile olive branch to unreceptive liberals. President Reagan was consistently vilified, and his domestic and foreign policy records were, and still are, distorted by the left. Through those years of ridicule, he was determined to stay the course to defeat communism. He ignored his popularity ratings. The left today credits the ending of the Cold War to our opponent, Mikhail Gorbachev, who only backed down because Reagan refused to do so. Today, the left in America seldom criticizes those participants in the war on terror who blow up innocent civilians as well as our soldiers. Like in Reagan's day, America is considered the problem by many of our own people. When the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan, millions of people were freed. Many on the left refuse to acknowledge that, unfortunately, war has to be threatened or even executed to achieve a lasting peace. Just ask Germany and Japan. Forgive me for sounding simplistic, but Iraq is still a work in progress. Reagan stayed the course with the Soviets and defeated them. While Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have threatened the very people who've been liberated, Reagan aided Afghanistan and the Contras against their oppressors, not turned his back on them. Our Republican candidates today can want to be like Reagan. Some even comb their hair like he did. But wanting to look like him and being him are two totally different things. Reagan was a conservative from day one, thus needed little tweaking of his image to make himself palatable to Republican voters. With Reagan, you knew where you stood, and you could turn your back on him without fear of being stabbed. In the future, will presidential candidates emulate and invoke the name of John McCain, Mike Huckabee, or Ron Paul like they glowingly do Ronald Reagan? I think not. As Reagan wannabes, they're all flawed. Wooing conservatives back under their tents is a tall order. They can wanna be Ronald Reagan, but conservatives are still waiting for the real deal. Either way, it's going to be a long 4 years. This year, the anti-war activist group Code Pink had a special Valentine's Day slogan: "Make out, not war." Now, while that's catchy, it may not fit in with founder Medea Benjamin's public appeal.
Okay, now listen up. Because we women of the United States have a very clear message for every single presidential candidate, including or especially Hillary Clinton. And we women say, pull out now. What do women say? Pull out now. What do women say? Pull out now. Get out of Iraq. Love and peace and compassion. That's what the women of this country want. Thank you.
Mixed messages are something to be avoided on Valentine's Day? Just a suggestion.